Could Senka have beaten Nao in the Divinez Destined Showdown? It's Nao Inabe and Senka Kanae. They are rivals and destined to fight in the Showdown of Fates. Between the two, it's clear from the dialogue that while Nao appears to have the winning record against her, she's actually been struggling most likely with burnout and love for the game, whereas Senka has continued trying and pushing herself to get to the top, even becoming a pro before now. Honestly, I think Senka's just got a bad case of wanting to lose, cause what do you mean you only won because Nao had a bad hand or was trying something out? That's part of the game. Luck and trying stuff out is part of the card game. Luck is part of it. Girl, just take your win, please. Also, I'd just like to thank this beautiful chatter for this find, because now I can give their decks a more detailed analysis. Between the two, who will come out on top with their vanguards? The fated one of Unparalleled, or the destined one of Exceedance? Let's get into it. Turn 1, it's Senka, and she goes first. She rides her grade 0 Falstator, while Nao begins with her grade 0 Heated Blade Ardart. Senka begins her turn and she draws. She discards a draw trigger, riding into her grade 1 Inno Progret, and with its effect, she reveals an Impaldir in her right deck and sets System Code Exceed into her Order Zone, and ends her turn. Nothing different about her turn, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what's in her hand right now. And she doesn't have any discard abilities in her deck, at least during this turn. Now, was it a mistake to discard her draw trigger though? Not necessarily. Discarding a draw trigger, especially in your early turns, instead of your crit or front triggers or heals or whatever triggers is best. And even better, because sometimes you want to keep some of those combo cards you can use later for offense. So no, I see no problem with this turn. It's turn 2 and Nao draws. She begins her turn with discarding Winged Dragon Persupatera and discarding the grade 1 Blaze Embar. With the effect of the grade 0, her going second, she gets to draw a card. She then calls Kofu, whose ability is if you have a Varga on the field, it gets a 5000 power shield. She attacks with Blaze Embar first and Senka no guards, hitting her Bulba Mine as her first damage of the fight. Then, the effect of System Code Exceed activates, leading to her choosing her draw trigger in the drop and putting it as an automod gauge, and gives her Vanguard an extra 5000 power. This means that Nao's Kofu can't attack. This means it's actually a mistake from Nao, because now that the Kofu that she has only has 8000 power, she can't actually attack with it and do some early rush, meaning that later in the fight, Kofu is essentially useless as it can be retired if Kanae decides to attack it, or just by any retiring effect. But to be fair, it's been stated that fated fighters don't actually know what the destined fighter's divine skills are. So I don't fault my girl now, because nobody actually explained what the effect of automod or the system code exceed was, so it wasn't her fault. But once again, she could have asked. But I mean, it's anime, baby. Since when is asking your opponent for an explanation considered a plausible idea? It's turn 3. Senka starts her turn discarding a random card and riding Dras Evolia, and calls a Nebula Invoke. No effects from the grade 1 or 2. She then attacks with Evolia, and she doesn't hit any trigger and now guards with a heal trigger. Then attacking with Nebula Invoke, which the anime doesn't show, but she does Soul Blast here and gives Nebula Invoke an extra 5000 power for this turn. Now guards this with a critical trigger. Now, should Nao have actually guarded with these two triggers considering how expensive it technically is? Honestly, I think it was fine, because later in the fight you see that even if she did save one of those triggers, it wouldn't have kept her from getting to 4 damage next turn. But should Senka have done something different? Yes, I think she should have used Nebula Invoke to get rid of Kofu instead, because later in the fight we see that Nao actually uses Kofu as a very powerful booster. Honestly, if she had gotten rid of Kofu faster, Nao would have had one less card in her hand later in the fight. And also, I know for a fact that Senka had more grade 2s in her hand, and it is entirely plausible that she could have rushed more, but Senka's fighting style, at least the way that the anime frames it, is that she is an extremely balanced fighter, balancing offense and defense extremely well. So going for only one call this turn means that she was just trying to be conservative with her hand, which I think works fine for her playstyle. It's turn 4. Nao begins the turn and she's currently got no damage. She draws a card and discards a random card, riding Boulder Axe Dragon, and with the skill of Blaze Embar, it's called to the rear guard behind Boulder Axe and Soul Charges. She then calls Shura and moves Kofu behind it. She attacks with Boulder Axe, first boosted by Blaze Ember. Senka no guards, and now drive checks and doesn't hit anything, giving Senka her second damage of the fight, a perfect guard. And with it, System Code Exceed activates again, giving her Vanguard another 5,000 power until the end of the turn. She puts False Stater as an auto mod. Now notes that the Vanguard is at 13,000 power now, so using Shura, she boosts with Kofu and attacks, to which Senka guards very easily with a 5,000 power shield. Now, you see why I said Senka should have attacked with Nao's Kofu. The Destined fighters are aware of the Divine skills, which is why they can prepare for them. Senka knows that Varga always retires the front row, meaning that she should be focused on getting rid of the back row boosters for now, because once Nao has a presence there, at times in this anime especially when you're playing in polio like Senka is doing, she has no way of actually retiring the back row here. Senka should have just attacked Kofu before, just to get rid of the future boosters in the future, especially considering, well, she is playing in polio. It's turn 5 and it's Senka's turn, and she's at 2 damage, and the first one to hit her avatar. And wanting to stand atop all summits and topple any challengers who dare to face her is the Destined One of Exceedance, Impaldio! With the effect of her grade 2 Ride Evolia, she puts the top card of her deck, a critical trigger, into her Automod gauge. She doesn't add any of her Automod cards back to her hand with Evolia's effect though. This was the correct move despite what many of you may think, because in order to get Vinstarter's full effect later, she needs 8 Automods. The only way to do that is for you to get 2 grade 3 turns, which is possible, but if you add an Automat back to your hand, you'll only be getting 7, and this is after taking 5 damage, so you really can't add a card back to your hand. So either you get really damn lucky and hit a heal trigger, or you just do what Senka did and not add a card back to your hand. Now, did this cost her later in the fight? Absolutely not, because the only card she should have possibly added was her critical trigger. But later in the fight at least, we see that not only did she draw another critical trigger, but even more defenses because of Vinstarter's full skill. She made no mistakes here, even with hindsight. Good instincts. Now, with Impaldio's skill, she counterblasts 1 and puts a card from the drop into the Automod gauge. She then looks at the top 5, calling from the top 5 Vinstarter. Also for this turn, her front row gets 10,000 power, 5,000 for every 2 Automods in the Automod gauge. She attacks with Impaldio, and at 23,000 power and 2 drive, it's ridiculously expensive to guard this type of attack. Now no guards, which I don't blame her, it was the correct move. Senka drive checks and gets a front trigger and a gather 2. Now takes her first damage of the fight, a stealth dragon Fushimachi Madoka. Senka now attacks with her Vinstarter, and with its effect, if she has 4 or more Automods, she can counterblast 1 and Vinstarter gets a drive check. And it gets a natural 5,000 if you have 2 or more Automods. Because of this, Nao knows that if Senka does get a trigger, she's gonna have to guard with over 48,000 power, because of the front row trigger and Impaldio's own effect of course. There's no point in guarding this much, especially so early, so now no guards. Senka luckily gets a critical trigger. She gives Nebula Invoke the extra 10,000 power, and Vinstarter naturally gets the critical. Now hits a Boulder Axe and an Obduracy Glaive Dragon. Senka then has to bind her Vinstarter due to its own effect, and Senka then attacks with her Nebula Invoke. Now again no guards. She's guarded no attacks this turn, and the reason is actually quite obvious, because although the show doesn't show it, I want to point out that Senka did in fact use Nebula Invoke's Soul Blast ability, meaning it gets another 5,000 power. That means that Nebula Invoke, for this one attack, despite not having any boosters, had a grand total of 45,000 power. Nao's Vanguard is at 10,000. There is no way she is guarding that. Senka ends her turn, and she didn't call a single booster, but that works out in her favor, because otherwise she would have actually been losing defense, and may have lost next round. Like Nao said, there's a reason she's a pro. She's got a very good balance of offense and defense. There weren't many problems as far as I could see, and yes, Nao definitely could have guarded some of those attacks, but they were so costly I just don't think it would have been worth it. Plus, just because you're at 4 damage doesn't mean you're at a bad spot. The only other major problem I had is that Senka didn't attack Nao's Shura. Well, truthfully, you have to choose your battles with a Varga deck. You either CB deny them, which is where you don't give them any counterblast to work with, or you just try to steamroll them and rush them as fast as possible, which is what Senka was trying to do, I think. Varga decks really have no in between, because if you CB deny them, then you gotta be going second. So the only other choice is to just rush and steamroll them early because they draw a lot later, which Senka is doing very well, but I think she could have rushed better. But that's my opinion at least. It's Nao's turn and she discards a draw trigger, and with a single sword draw, your defeat is all but certain. The dual-wielding dragon takes flight. Now rides Varga Drawgress. With its effect, she calls Boulder Axe and then calls Obduracy Glaive Dragon, which gets a boost effect when it's in the back row. With its effect, Shura gets 5,000 power, and when Boulder Axe is retired, it returns to Nao's hand. Senka no guards and hits her Fluctuate Buster Barrage. Once again, Exceed activates, giving Senka another Automon. She puts her Inner Progret into the Exceed order, and Empoleon gets 5,000 power. Boosted by Obduracy Glaive Dragon, now attacks with Boulder Axe, to which Senka intercepts with one Nebula Invoke. Because of its effect, it gets a plus 15,000 shield, which I just gotta say is BS, cause holy what a shield. Now, due to Boulder Axe's own effect, it retires itself and now draws a card, but she adds it back to her hand due to Shura's effect. She then attacks with the Dual-Wielding Dragon. With its effect, she counterblasts one and she retires both of their front rows, and Varga gets 10,000 power. And with Shura's skill, when it's retired, now counterblasts and calls it back with 10,000 extra power. Senka, no guards, now hits another Obduracy Glaive Dragon and a critical trigger, giving all the effects to Varga. Senka hits 2 damage. This once again gives her even more defensive power, because Exceed gives Empoleon another 2 more Automats and an extra 10,000 power. Meaning, for this turn, there's an extra 15,000 extra power for Empoleon. Empoleon is at a staggering 28,000 power. Now restands Varga Drawgress with its own effect, and boosted by Blaze Embar, now attacks with Varga at 43,000 power, to which Senka easily guards with a front trigger, which gives Empoleon a shield of 48,000 power. Now, this is the best example, I think, of strategy ever in Vanguard. This is make or break in the game, and I believe it just shows the audience just how smart this girl is. Yes, I said it! Looking at her hand, this is roughly what she has. She has a Kofu at 10,000 shield, a Varga no shield, a Perfect Guard, a Critical Trigger, which is at 15,000 power, a Boulder Axe at 5,000, an Obduracy Glaive at no shield, and another critical trigger. This means in total she has 4 cards that she can guard with next turn. She knows there's no way she can. Senka's already at 7 Automons, and she knows that Empoleon gives 1 extra Automon, meaning next turn she's got 8, and the front row will be at 20,000 power. That's without any triggers or boosters. And she knows a Persona ride is coming, and with an unknown divine skill, Senka's gonna go all in. So, now uses her divine skill defensively. With a counterblast, she restands Varga Drawgress and it gets 2 more drives. Varga only has 33,000 power and 2 criticals though, and with Empoleon at 28,000 power, it's an easy block for Senka with a Nebula Invoke when she has 6 cards in her hand. But this might have been Senka's biggest mistake. Using her Nebula Invoke, a card with literally a 20,000 shield, means that she's giving up a big defensive piece for essentially nothing. This attack can just be guarded with either 2 normal rear guards or even just a trigger, which would have been completely fine. At least next turn, she would have had an extra 5,000 shield because of Nebula Invoke. Anyways, now drive checks and gets a Perfect Guard and a draw trigger. She draws another Shura. She then attacks with Shura boosted by Kofu, and its attack is at 35,000 power. Senka guards with a critical trigger. Before anyone says anything, I know hindsight is 20/20, meaning that Senka could have probably won this had she actually kept her Nebula Invoke in her hand, a card that literally has a 20,000 shield, especially because she could have used her Bulba Mine or even 2 Gather 2s. But in reality, this is what Senka thought would be Nao's last turn. Empoleon's divine skill is pretty much an instant must-use PG, and she knows Nao has one. She didn't know about the other one, but considering the power I'm about to show you next turn, can you blame her for thinking that she could win next turn? Nao has 10 cards in her hand, by the way. And now it's make or break. It's Senka's turn, and she's going to show that bringing 2 swords to a laser gun fight is a horrible idea. Senka Persona Rise. Empoleon! With its skill, she counterblasts one again, and she puts her critical trigger in the Automat gauge. Calling out another Nebula Invoke, the front row gets 20,000 power. and she calls a Vinge Starter, a Bulba Mine, and 2 Gather 2s. The 2 Gather 2s get 10,000 power if there are 4 or more Automods. This might be the most powerful lineup Senka could have had, but there is a way it could have been stronger. Senka could have put her Gather 2 behind Vinge Starter, giving Vinge Starter an extra 10,000 power, which would have made Nao have to use her PG on that. But how would she guard Impaldio's attack, especially with Impaldio's divine skill? With a counterblast, Impaldio gets an extra critical and 2 extra drives. At 61,000 power, Impaldio is an absolute beast. Now, here's where I get a little potential out of this scenario. Because if Senka had put Gather 2 behind Vinge Starter and had Bulba Mine on Impaldio, Impaldio would have only had 51,000 power. But would anyone in the comments really tell me that you're not going to put at least a 73,000 power shield if you want to guard Impaldio boosted by Gather 2? Like, you know, with 4 drives, the chances are she's going to hit at least 2 drive checks. But can Nao actually tank that? Nao currently has a Kofu, a 10,000 shield, a Varga, no shield, a perfect guard, a critical trigger, a boulder axe, a obduracy glaive, another critical trigger, a draw trigger, a PG, and a critical trigger. The answer is yes, actually. Even with this potential scenario, Nao was unbelievably smart. And yeah, because with the 6 defensive cards she has in her hand, she has a blocking power of 88,000. Not even Senka is getting through that, not to mention the 2 perfect guards. In the anime, Nao guards the Impaldio attack with a perfect guard, discarding Obduracy Glaive Dragon. Senka quadruple drives. Senka gets a heal trigger, healing 1 damage, giving the extra power to Vinge Starter. Another Vinge Starter, a Gather 2, and a critical trigger. And she gives all the power to Vinge Starter. She now attacks with Vinge Starter at a whopping 76,000 power and 2 criticals, and with its effect, with another counterblast, she now gets 2 drives because she's got 8 Automods. 6 drives in 1 turn is mad work, I'm not gonna lie. But now, guard using 7 cards in her hand, and Senka drive checks twice, getting an Impaldio and a critical trigger. She then attacks with Nebula Invoke, and with a Soul Blast, it's at 83,000 power and 2 criticals, which now perfect guards. The Clutch Goat! Can we get a hell yeah for the Clutch Goat, Nao Inabe? Truthfully, I don't think Senka could have played this turn any better than she did. I didn't see any problem with this one at least, not in my knowledge at least. It's turn 8, it's Nao's turn, and the final turn of the fight. She needs 2 damage to win this fight, but she does have, of course, her trusty avatar. She draws and rides Varga Drawgress. She draws a card and the front row gets 10,000 power until the end of the turn. She calls to Impulsive Dragon from her hand, and with Energy Blast 3, she looks at the top 5 cards of her deck and calls a Roxay, and with its effect, Senka can't intercept, meaning Nebula Invoke can't intercept with its 20,000 power shield. She then moves Obduracy Glaive Dragon to the front row, and boosted by Kofu, she attacks with Twin Pulsive. Now, for small reference here, Senka has 7 cards in her hand, but we know from her massive 6 drive check last turn, she has 2 critical triggers, 1 heal trigger, 1 Vinge Starter, 1 Impaldio, a Gather 2, and I know that she has a PG. She has a lot of defense, including a PG, to which she can discard the Vinge Starter and have a total shield of 50,000 power. But against Varga Drawgress, who has 4 attacks minimum, that's a tall order. So what can she do? She no guards and gets a front trigger. That is the luckiest pull I've seen. Damn. Her Exceed activates, meaning Impaldio gets another 5,000 power. Now attacks with Varga Drawgress. With its effect, she can counterblast 1, retire both front rows, and Varga Drawgress gets 10,000 power. On top of Twin Pulse's effect, when it's retired, Varga gets an extra 5,000 power. Also, by the way, Obduracy Glaive Dragon can't be retired by its effects. So, Varga Drawgress is at a pretty okay attack, I'm not gonna lie to you. Senka guards with a perfect guard, discarding most likely her Vinge Starter. The only way that Nao wins here is if she gets a trigger. For reference, the reason for that is that Nao has another attack with Varga Drawgress, and when it's boosted by the Blaze Embar, it will be at 48,000 power. Not to mention, she still has obduriously glaive dragon. Senka only has 50,000 shield, but she does have Empoleon at 28,000. If Nao doesn't hit a trigger here, obduriously glaive dragon is only at 33,000 boosted by Roxay. That means 41,000. So Senka could easily guard that. Meanwhile, Varga will be at 48,000. Doing the math, Senka does have enough to block all of that. If Nao doesn't get a trigger, she'd only need to use 2 triggers, so the shield will be at 58,000. Then Nao attacks with a glaive dragon, she'll still have her gather 2 and a trigger for a 48,000 shield. She's got enough. So Nao needs a miracle. And of course, you know, with her boyfriend, Nao has pretty good luck on her side. Nao drive checks and gets a Shura and it's a draw trigger. Okay, this is a bit lame. I'm not gonna lie to you. What? Obduriously glaive dragon gets 10,000 power. Now restands Varga and she slashes down Empoleon. The sword has won against the laser cannon, and Senka hits her Empoleon for the final damage of the fight. This is a bit of an extra segment, but I did want to talk about the type of decks that they both ran. Senka unfortunately doesn't have an exact deck profile that I can talk about. However, I know that currently, at this time at least, Empoleon only ran the cards that you saw. She had no retirers, no nothing else. Her entire deck was based around the fact that she had to just keep getting drive checks until she won. And honestly, I think the way that she constructed it was very well done, or at least it was because of the luck that she had getting those cards, because there was great defense and offense at the same time. So that's that. But now I also can't seem to get a deck profile from her for the specifically, at least. I can't specifically find the deck that she used during her Destined Showdown, but I can use the one she did from her Rising Dragon Cup. Here, the only thing that I can't find is a Twin Pulsive Dragon, and I don't know very much else about what she was running, but I know for a fact that from this at least, I can see that she's an unnaturally defensive player. She's only got about 7 cards that she can't guard with. Combine that with just the sheer amount of defense she has quite a lot. Now, some people can say, you know, in some of the meta decks, oh, but you run like every card can defend or whatnot. But in the anime, usually there's not that. Not everyone runs only defense. She is actually playing one of the more defensive decks in this, at least this anime, that I think. I think it's a very well constructed deck. I unfortunately don't know what she was running in the Destined Showdown, but if you know, please tell me. I think she did a very good job with this deck, and if anyone wants to talk about, you know, how she could have done it better or whatnot, then honestly, you have to use only the support cards that she had that were specific to Varga. Because from what I can see, they're only allowed, at least in the anime, to use like some of the generics, but very few of the generics that are not that strong. And they're allowed, and they have to use at least their support that they've given. So there's that. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you want. And please come check out the videos and my live streams if you want. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, everyone.